So this one says, why is it so difficult to keep a budget? I've recently started to keep a budget and I'm finding it much harder than I anticipated. Based on my salary, I decided to cut a lot of non-essential expenses, but there are some things you just can't do without. Earning additional income is more of a long-term prospect for me, so I'm looking for ways to manage this in the short run. Does anyone have any tips or strategies for sticking to a budget when it feels like there's little room to maneuver? Any advice on how to handle essential expenses without feeling like I'm constantly stretched thin?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think what's really helped me is figuring out what your baseline budget number is. And so essentially your baseline budget number is how much do I need to get through the month? So that should include things like your basic necessities. So like food, utilities, housing, and transportation. If you're in debt, it should also cover your minimum payments and any other expenses to get through the month. So that could be your phone bill, internet bill, childcare, or insurances, all those things. Figure out exactly how much you need. So that way once you hit that number, you're good. Anything above that can then be deployed to whatever your situation is. So if you're in debt, that money could be used towards paying off debt or saving for your next financial goal. That's where I like to start with, is figuring out what is my baseline budget number.
Awesome. Yeah. And I think this person, it seems like this is just kind of where they're at right now. This is the stage of life they're in. If they're not going to increase their income a little bit, it's going to feel stretched, but it also probably feels this way because they're actually starting to budget. Like you're starting to look at the numbers and you're like, oh, it's not going as far as I thought it was going to, right? So, prioritize the most important things, like you said, that you need your income to cover, and then cut out the rest. So that you don't feel so stretched, depending on, what you want to prioritize is most important. Because things are tight, continue to check in with your expenses, like I just mentioned during the beginning of the episode, and budget. So you know how much you have left to spend throughout the month, rather than getting to the end and being like, oh, I have nothing left to spend in this category, or I'm way over.
Yeah, no, that's a great point. And I think what, you mentioned prioritizing, and I think what can really help too is to prioritize, like let's say you write down all your expenses. Put those in a priority list. What's the most important things? Those should be at the very top. I always like to start with, like I said, the food, utilities, housing, and transportation. That's like kind of the bare minimum just to survive. As you work your way down the list, things are getting less and less important, so that at the bottom of the list are things like going out or dining out or entertainment or subscriptions, things like that. And if you need to make cuts to the budget, you just look at the very bottom of the budget. What is down there that I can cut? And again, if you need to make even more cuts beyond that, then you can start looking at some of your other necessary bills. Can I switch providers for my internet or my phone service? Maybe I can go something cheaper in the meantime. But I really like that if you can prioritize your expenses from most important to least important, it gets really clear on where your priorities are and also where you can start making cuts to the budget. So that's kind of one of the things that I like to do.
Yeah, for sure. I also think, this person feels that they're stretched thin. I get that. And if you have like that mindset around budgeting and that you can't spend on things, you're not going to enjoy it anyway. So you have to try to find some things, maybe for free or that doesn't cost something to do, and keep your life fun. Because if you're only focusing on the money that you don't have, it's just not going to be a good experience for you. So one time I worked with a client who was really focused on getting out of debt. And so her budget was very tight. So she would go out with friends and she would actually just have water, but she was still able to experience going out with friends and still being able to socialize, but not spend a ton of money. So that helped her. So finding those little things that can bring you joy while also, living on a tight income or a tight budget can help you push forward.
Yeah, I'm really glad you mentioned that, because I feel like when people hear the words like I'm on a budget, like they associate that with not being able to have fun or do things that you want to do. Like first of all, there's a lot of ways you can have fun on a budget and also just for free. But I did like what you said about, like, if you're going to go out with friends, maybe just don't order as much or don't order anything. Like, you're still out there socializing. That's probably the point of it. But there's so many ways you can go out and have fun for free. Like, go out in nature more, go on walks more, like take food like on a picnic and go to a park or the beach, or depending on where you live. Like, that can be a really good way to still enjoy life and live on a budget. That way you don't associate living on a budget with not enjoying life, which is kind of the crappy part of it. But this person did mention that there are some things that you just can't do without. And, I think you could make an argument. Maybe they're talking about like childcare. Like, obviously you just can't do without that if that's your circumstances. But when I first read this, I kind of just, it pushed me towards maybe this person is trying to make excuses for things that you're just like, I just can't do without it. You know, I can't go without buying my coffee in the morning. And so I go to Starbucks every single day, or I can't go without going out with friends because I need to be social. To me, it almost sounds like an excuse for making bad financial decisions and keeping in those wants in your budget that probably should be cut. I don't know. Did you kind of get that vibe from that, or am I just like way off base here?
Yeah, I took it like both ways, that they maybe like to do some things that they don't want to give up, but also I thought like essentials that you can't live without. So, different types of cleaning supplies and, different toiletries and things like that. So I wasn't sure where they were really going with that.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. I think it's just, for me, it falls into like a lot of people are like, well, I can't live without my gym membership, or I can't live without these things that granted, they're probably really, really important to you. But I think when it comes to like being very intentional with your money, we got to make a clear list. Like, what is a need and what is a want? And oftentimes I see people putting things in the need list that are more of a want, and they're like, well, I just can't live without it.
The information, opinions, and recommendations provided on this podcast are for entertainment purposes only and do not constitute professional financial advice. Any financial decisions you make based on the content of this podcast are your responsibility. We strongly recommend consulting with a licensed financial advisor or other qualified professional before making any significant financial decisions. By listening to this podcast, you acknowledge that we are not liable for any financial outcomes.